Okay, Chief Master Sergeant Tom Reed retired. I was in the Air Force for almost 24 years. I got stop-loss right after 9/11, so I got to add another 9 months. And then I was in federal government for 20 years. I'm now retired. I still call myself a Chief Master Sergeant because in the Civil Air Patrol, which I'm part of the Civil Air Patrol, and this is all related to the Civil Air Patrol, and I'll tell you why in a little bit, is we actually have an NCO program that if you were in the military, you can keep your rank. And so I wear the same uniform, I just have like a CAP over here. It just confuses the cadets because almost everybody's an officer, and so they go to salute me, and I'm like, you don't salute me and all that stuff. And then they become officers, cadet officers. I'm like, should I even salute them? So anyway, so I still call myself a Chief Master Sergeant, Chief. I love it. I feel good. But you were here to talk about the Nike missile program, and specifically BA-79, which is at Granite, Maryland. So everybody knows where Granite is. Cool. We are going to do, after this, if you're interested, you can drive over there and I will give you a tour of the site. So between 2 and 3. So if you want to grab a quick lunch, be there by 2. And then we'll do a tour of the site. If you can't make today, we do have open houses. The first one will be this month on the 27th. It's a Sunday from 1 to 4. And if you come during that time, we have periodic tours, and 2 of my tour guides are in the back, which also scares me, because they know more than I do. But we do tours, so you come there, you're going to get a mini version of this, and then we will walk down and we tour the site. It includes going down into the magazine, and people go, oh, the silo. There's no silos, okay, just warn you now. So, okay, Granite, Maryland, home of BA-79. Why is it called BA-79? I'll hold it out to you guys. Why is it BA? Baltimore. It was designed to defend Baltimore. If I said W. Washington. If I said SF. You got it. Okay, cool. Okay, it gets a little harder. What if I said B?
What?
Boston. Good job. So yeah, they were designed to defend major cities that have strategic assets. Baltimore back in the 50s, we had the port, we had Martin aircraft manufacturing, we had a number of defensive industries that were strategic. So we had a defense system going around it. Now, a little harder, what's 79?
The year it was installed?
Pardon?
The year it was installed?
No. By that time it was close. Yeah. But I like it, good thinking. Think about Baltimore, the middle of Baltimore, put a 100-degree radius around it, 79 degrees. So now when if you go around and what is it, W26, somebody was talking about W26, defending Washington, it's 26 degrees out from Washington. So now when you see stuff, you see like C-94, Chicago, almost straight north of Chicago. So you can get that, that's how it works.
How many were around Baltimore?
18 to begin with. Baltimore and Washington. It was a combined site. Fort Meade was the headquarters, and they controlled both Washington and Baltimore. So anything from this one? And again, it was the last line of defense. And we'll probably talk about that later because I've mixed a bunch of slides together, so we'll see what happens. It was the last line. If they got through, these are Soviet bombers we're going after. If they got through NORAD, they made it over Canada, and they made it through the Air Force defensive, this was the last chance. And that's why these are actually under the Army, because they had close air defense. So, okay, got to push button. Let's see which button I want to push. Page down. Sweet. Okay, and this actually comes from, like I said, pull some of these from actually our slides when you do a tour there. So it's 255 sites throughout the continental United States. These were also sold to other countries. They were in Alaska, but they were also sold to other countries, and they were well into the 80s still being used. For BA-79 and many other sites, we actually had nuclear warheads there. Okay? So within 30 miles of Baltimore, there were nuclear warheads stored there.
What purpose of nuclear heads here?
Pardon?
What is the purpose to have nuclear?
I'll tell you when we get there. But there were warheads here during the 60s and 70s. I'll give you a flash ahead. They were handled by the Army National Guard, full-time guard, but still Army National Guard. So the site right now is currently owned by the state of Maryland. Civil Air Patrol, we lease it for our headquarters. So that's why we got involved with restoring the site and why we got restored and doing the research and figuring out more about what is this, Nike program and what's this BA-79 stuff. And one of our big goals was to open up to the public, which we were able to do last year. It took us 6 years to get it ready, but we were finally able to open it to the public. And we had like over, how many people we had, Dave, over the year? Like eight, almost 1,000. One day we had over 255, and that was like crazy. But it was a good crazy. Okay, if you can see it, I know it's not probably easy, especially on the wings, and I'm in your guys' way, so I apologize. You can see we're up there, and you see all the blue dots? So those are all the locations of the sites and the headquarters and stuff like that. So you can see how they kind of surround Baltimore and DC, so you can protect from any angle. Because they were kind of directional. Didn't know. Oh, I see what happened. I'm hitting the bottom part. See if I skipped any. Okay, I got to be careful because there's also the screen there. Okay, if you were there, we talked about the history of the program. Then we walked down to the launch area. Where Granite is, that's the launch area. There's actually going to be two areas. The radar site, the integrated fire control, which is about a mile away from the launch site. And we'll talk a little bit about why it had to be a mile away. And then you would also learn about two types of missiles while you were down there. And then you actually will go down into one of the magazines. We have steps. That's our only problem we have. If anybody's handicapped, we have steps. So what was the program? Kind of like I said, it's a surface-to-air missile designed to provide last gap defense against Soviet bombers coming over the North Pole. And does anybody know what was the Soviet bomber of the early 50s? Remember what it was called? Tu-4? I think the Bull. Tu-4. Kind of looked like a B-29. I think it was. Reverse engineer B-29. But again, last line of defense. So they recognized this right after World War II that we needed something already. The planes were getting faster, we had jets. You couldn't use guns to knock these guys out of the air, or at the percentage you needed, which was 100%. Especially after the Soviets detonated a nuclear warhead, only one plane had to get through and your city is gone. So you had to have 100% shoot-down rate. So in the early 50s, late 40s, early 50s, they started designing this air-to-surface missiles. It was the first one operational in the world. It's the Nike program. The first missile was called the Ajax. And we're talking a little bit about the range and some of the other equipment of it. So it was designed by 52, tested in 53. Was first delivered in 1953. Fort Meade was the first place to get it. The one incident they had, they actually launched one accidentally and went over the newly constructed BWI Parkway and detonated, or I don't think it said detonated, I think it said, accidentally blew up at that time. But by 54 it became operational at Fort Meade, and by May 54 it was operational around the clock combat status. And ours was by end of 54, ours was operational too. When I say ours, Granite. This is how it operates. Excuse me, I'm fighting a cold right now. I'm over the cold, I'm just fighting everything that's left over from it. It's radar controlled, okay? So you have, starting on my side, you see an acquisition radar. It used to be a low par, because this Ajax only had a 25-mile range. So you didn't have to look out too far to acquire the target and then send a missile after it. HIPAR, you see the big one with the dome? That came in line when the Hercules started, which we'll talk about that later, because it had a much farther range, so you need to detect the target much earlier on. So they had a high power, high performance radar. So you had acquisition radar. Once you acquire the target, then you have a target tracking radar. So now I have a special radar just tracking that target. I have another radar, a ranging one, giving me the range to the target. And then I have one more radar who's tracking the missile and giving guidance to the missile. So you can see I have 5 radars sitting there, and that's against for only one missile. And it's gonna get a little confusing because I'm gonna tell you, they had 24 launchers at this site. So if I have 24 launchers, they only want to launch one at a time, why do I need 24 of them? One of the ways to get around a bit, they put 2 sets of radars in. So I'm launching 2 missiles at a time. Any questions on that, on how it operates as far as the radar goes?
When they launch 2 at a time, would that be 2 to the same target or different targets?
It could be different targets, and it probably was. So you can see on your left, that's what it looked like in the 50s. You can see 2 sets of radars. That's the IFC, Integrated Fire Control Area. On the right, when they got the Hercules in, they went down to 1 set of radars. So you're only launching 1 at a time. Some other things that make it possible was, okay, Ajax is going about 2.5 Mach. It only got a 25-mile range, so my engineers can figure out that sucker's within a minute or 2 has already detonated, hit the target, missed the target, whatever, and I'm already recycling. I can start, sending off the next missile. Hercules, almost 100-mile range, 90 to 100-mile range. Now I'm going 3.6 Mach, so it's still 2 to 3 minutes. I'm on target, and so I can send the next rocket out if I have to. So that's why they get away with just having 2 radar sets and then 1 radar set. It's pretty quick. So, and then in the meantime, I have 24 launchers. As I launch 1 here, I'll probably launch 2, and as those 2 are launching, that crew comes out and starts replacing those. 2 more go, 2 more go, and what I'm doing, I'm pointing to different sections, because there's 6 sections, and you'll see that in a little bit. By the time those 6 missiles are gone, they're ready to launch again. So that's what our site BA-79 looked like in 1957. So you can see, so there's 1 section, so there's 4 missiles on the launch pad. There's 4, there's 4, there's 3, I don't know what the 4th one is, and then here and here. So when totally operational and everything's working, you have 24 missiles that they can launch. And then just for FYI, this is where they would actually assemble the missile, and then it would come out, and you can see barely, you can see like a berm around this area. That's where they would fuel the missile. And the missile, part of it is solid fuel, but the launcher is actually liquid fuel, and they would fuel it here. That's why they had the berm around it, because if anything happened, it protects that area. So, and it's pretty caustic. I think I have a picture. I don't want to jump down. I watched a guy on a cruise ship do that. He was a comedian, jumped down, and the ship moved, and he was like, pardon?
Were they ready?
No. No, usually what happened, especially during peacetime, there'd be like 1 site that would be operational, on call, and they would be ready. Everybody else is doing training, that's the downtime, maintenance, everything else. During the Cuban Missile Crisis, everybody's up and running. Everybody's ready to go, and they're ready to launch. I've heard stories of people that lived around the area, and they would say, like, in the morning, they'd be waiting for the buses, and they see the missile coming up.
Wow.
And they get back from the school, get off the bus, and the missile goes back down. So, Monday through Friday, kind of, But there'd be alerts all the time, and I guess you had the alarms going off and stuff like that. So.
Was there a government defense contractor that contracted all this?
They were all built by local contractors. So you had a set design, you know, this is what it should look like, and then a local contractor come in would build the site. And so if you go around other areas, and we've been to a couple of different sites, they look very similar, but there'd be different minor differences, like the steps are different, you know, or instead, you know, there'd be a little minor, but for the most part, they were built the same way. And what they did was they just dug a big hole, built a concrete structure, and then just filled it in again. So it's about 2.5 feet of concrete around it and above it. So you had the launch area and the battery control area. Battery control area was the ICF. That was about a mile behind the radar. So if you come up Hernwood Road on Granite, if you're coming up from the Tapsco River, coming that way, as you're driving on the left-hand side, you see a big open field. That's where all the radar towers used to be. And that's where the admin building was, and the control area was. State owns that too, and they came in and cleared everything off in the early 2000s. Graffiti, people were getting over and getting onto the towers and stuff, so they knocked it all down. So now it's a big grassy field. I think the basketball court's still there in the parking lot. That's it. Go down about a mile farther, that's the launch area. Because remember, the radars are looking north for this site, are mostly looking north. The missiles are looking north too. And so if I'm going to control a missile, I got to be looking towards where the missile is. But I have to be far enough away because, okay, so I have my radar, right? And it skews up and down, left and right, and stuff like that. When that missile takes off, it's like a bottle rocket. It goes fast off the launch pad and up. It's in Mach before you know it. It's got to be far enough away that the radar can skew up and follow it. Too close, it can't do it. So that's why they're always about a mile away. Stories I've heard that, is there an underground tunnel between the two? No. I haven't found it. Now, there is, you know, some conduit down there, and I've talked to some people who had opened them up, not supposed to, and then they have like some kind of secure panel that you can't go in and mess with the circuitry. But mostly it was telephone, you know, and then some stuff like that, and then there was radio. And that's how they communicated between the two sites. So you had that, you had the radar, you had the admin back there. That's where, for our site, the mess hall was at that site. In the launch area, the area in the front, and I'll give you another picture pretty soon, the launch area, the Missile Assembly Building, which you saw in the first picture. You also have, later on, a Warhead Assembly Building when the Hercules came on, and I'll tell you about that when we talk about the Hercules. And again, if you come to the site, you will see those buildings are still up and running. We're using one as our museum or our display area, and the other one is, that's where they're building the mock-up missile right now. So this is one section. Again, this BA 79 was called a double site. Most sites had 3 sections, so it'd be 12 missile launchers. This is a double site, so we actually have 6 sections, which means we have 24 launchers. One section would have 4 launchers, and then an underground magazine and a control room. It would be run by about 5 soldiers, so like a senior NCO and 4 other guys. I've heard up to 7 sometimes, but they will be in charge of maintaining the missiles, doing daily maintenance, weekly maintenance on them. And then they're in charge of getting the missiles out of the magazine and onto the launcher and into firing position. So you can see at the bottom, that's where they would storm in the magazine. They store them horizontal. So when you go down into our magazine, you're just walking down like 29 steps, and then you're this big cavern. And they would just store them horizontally. For the Ajax, they would take one fin off so they can put them closer together. So they could put like 10 missiles in the magazine. To get them in and out, we had an elevator. And at our site, we have 3 different types of magazines. You were saying there's a standard construction. Well, they started building, this is just I think happened. They started building this site. They built the first 2, and they're designed for the Ajax. Ajax is 34 feet long. I have a 40-foot elevator. I'm good, right? No problem. I got plenty of room to spare. They're already starting to design the next generation missile. Next generation missile is 41 feet long. And they're like, oh. I'm sure there was a few swear words in there. So if you go look at the next two magazines at our site, they modified the standard and they just added 4 feet onto the elevator. But if you go down into sometimes you hear me call them pit. If you go down to the magazine, the pit, it's really, really narrow now because they just took that space. They didn't make it any bigger. So the elevator and the elevator doors have 4 foot on them. Our last two magazines were designed specifically for the Hercules. Their elevator is 52 feet long. So you go in there, you can go down into the Ajax one, and you can also go down into one of the Hercules ones. Another one, I'll just throw it out, really weird. We got there, the first 3 magazines on the south side, the elevator is up. The doors are hanging down, elevators are locked in the upright position. You go to the other 3, the elevators are down and the doors are closed. We don't know why they did that, but it makes it good because we can go down into one pit and you can look and you can see the elevator. You go into the other pit, you can see the elevator and the door's closed. So, okay, so that's the Ajax. There they are in launch position. They just look like bottle rockets almost, don't they? They just had one booster and then the launcher. Booster's going to just get them up to speed. You can't maneuver with it. Get up to speed. Once it drops off, the booster drops off, launcher takes over. Now I can control it. Some facts. Okay, first working SAM, surface air missile, is going after manned aircraft. 32 feet long, like I said. 50-inch wingspan, so not really big. 2-stage, like I said. One's liquid fueled, and that fuel was nasty. Mach 2.5, and about a 30-mile range. So not really quick. And the warhead was conventional. 3 small warheads. And one of the reasons they were designing the next generation, because radars back then were pretty rudimentary. They're still not that great. And if a formation of bombers comes in, your radar shows a big blip. I launch that up, I explode it, I might not hit anything. I'm just hitting in between the bombers. So they wanted something that had a bigger bang for the buck, which is why the next missile comes into play. There they are refueling it. You can see the berm all around it. And this is pure military. Anybody, I know I have one Air Force retiree. You got any Army people? Pardon?
Marine Corps.
Marine Corps? Same mentality. I lump us all together. Because if you look, the people doing the refueling are in hazmat gear. They got everything. They're covered and everything. They're ready to go. Look at the guys watching.
10 feet away.
Yeah, they're 10 feet away. It's like, oops, I spilled stuff. They're like, oh, that's not good. But that's our mentality, you know. It's like, well, the regulation says that you must wear it, so you're going to wear it. But I'm not. I'm the inspector. But we actually still have, you can see how it's resting. It's on a platform. It's actually angled. So when they fuel it, they don't get any air bubbles in there. So if you go out to our site, you're going to see a little mound. And that's where they would put the trailer so they could fuel it. Okay, and like I said, this system's, it's great. First generation, I can do better. So they start working on the Hercules. You can see they started test firing 55, 58. They started converting a number of the Hercules sites, Ajax sites into Hercules. That went out. Our site was converted between 58, 61. So for a while, we had both. On one side, we had Ajax, and the Army, which Army always does, they gave the old stuff to the Army National Guard. Ajax was controlled by Army National Guard. The other side was Hercules, that was Army. So there was a rivalry there because the Army didn't like the Army National Guard. So the Army National Guard went home, you know, at the end of the day. They didn't like that. So anyhow, and then by 63, our site and most of the other sites, Ajax was gone. So let me check on time here. Okay, half hour, doing good. Okay, I can do this in 10 more minutes, and then, or 10 minutes or so, and then any questions. But they've been asking questions in between, so. So anyhow, so that's what the Hercules missile looked like. That's actually from our site. One of our folks that worked there, he had a bunch of pictures. So that's sitting on one of our launchers from 1965, and we made duplicates of that sign. We're going to post one outside of the building as soon as I get my guy back to build it. The difference here is there's 4 boosters. Where the Ajax had 1, this had 4. So this baby is going up quick. It also can carry a lot more weight. Again, it's 41 feet long. Much bigger, much faster, 3.6 Mach. And now I can carry a much bigger warhead. So what's the best way to take out a formation of bombers? There's even a better way. Because they did have a conventional warhead on this thing, it was a T-45, and it was just all shrapnel. But I want to take a whole formation out.
Nuclear warhead.
That's where the nuclear warhead came in. The plan was, and it was the W-31, and they tested it, and you can go to YouTube, and you can find them testing an air burst of this missile, or this warhead. The plan was to launch this. Again, this site is pointing north. What's north of Maryland? Pennsylvania. Any Soviet bombers coming in, I'm going to launch this north, and I'm going to detonate it, air burst. And if it's within, I forget, like a mile, you're gone. If it's within like 5 miles, you're gone within a couple minutes. So they were hoping that they could take out a whole squadron with this. And you're thinking, this is what I was thinking when I first heard of this. Oh, last defense. They're going to try conventional. If that doesn't work, then the last one going up is going to be nuclear. We had folks that worked there. They said almost every one of them was nuclear tipped. They had maybe 1 or 2 conventional. I've heard another guy say that each section, because with these are much bigger, so each section would have like 6 missiles. 5 would be nuclear tipped, 1 would be conventional. So the plan was to just go nuclear right away. Okay. We went Hercules. So we went from 18 sites around Washington and Baltimore, we went down to 9. 5 were National Guard, 4 were active duty. Now we have National Guard handling nuclear weapons all around this area, and not just here, all over the US. And we were figuring that if there's probably about 20 missiles at our site, again, 20 to 24 missiles, most of them would have been nuclear tipped. So, and then to protect them, they went from the Ajax to Hercules. They added a second fence. So when you get there, you're going to see a second fence. Now there's cows between those and horses on the other side. They actually added attack dogs, not guard dogs, attack dogs. They would attack anybody. I've talked to a number of volunteers that first they did when that alarm went off, where are the dogs? Because they would attack them too. Doesn't matter. Sometimes they would attack the trainer. We heard stories also that the guards, when they were doing like night shift, they just released the dogs and they would go to sleep. The supervisor's not coming in to check. And there was one story where the supervisor tried to come in to check. And last time he did that. So yeah, and then every hatch had a sensor alarm on it too. So that's how they protected it, again. And the guy who did work there, he said when they closed this site down, they used Chinooks to get the nuclear weapons out. We heard stories that they used milk trucks to bring them in, but we haven't found any official on that. And again, about 100-mile range, but still, that's Pennsylvania, you know. Now again, if you're worried about fallout, most of the time if you have a ground burst, you're sucking up all that crap. That's what radioactive, that's the fallout, that's what's going to get you. Air bursters had a lot to become radioactive. And you also have wind and stuff like that. So probably New Jersey's going to get it. But again, this is still the 60s. They're still figuring this out.
Who's going to have to deal with the boosters falling on their heads?
That's one reason why they never launched from here for testing or anything like that, because the boosters got to fall somewhere. Now they did calculate where they would think it was going to fall. They had like a radius where they would drop, and it was pretty much farmland. But you still might take out a farmer or a house or something like that. So they didn't launch from here. They did all their testing down in Bliss in Texas. They would actually have snap drills. What do they call it? Short notice. Something. But they would basically they'd hit the unit and go, okay, you have 24 hours to get to Texas. And so they would send their best crew down there, and they had to build a missile, test it, launch it. If they did it all correctly, the whole unit was qualified for a year. And we actually have a little plaque from one guy who was actually the first NCO to launch a missile down there. And there's a little piece of the missile on it. So he gave us that, so that's pretty neat. So a lot of that, they would, like in Hawaii, they would also launch because it was out over water. And I think down on the Gulf Coast, there's a couple areas they would do it. They would launch, but for the most part, we didn't launch over here because, like you said, the booster's got to fall someplace. And so does the launcher somehow. So, but collateral damage. If there was an actual attack, I'm willing to sacrifice a farmer versus Baltimore. Now, the farmer may disagree.
I think somebody on the site's going to disagree.
So, coming to the end of the program, what was happening in the early 70s? Missiles. ICBMs was the biggest thing. We weren't worried about bombers anymore. We were worried about ICBMs. We also had detente nuclear agreements. SALT 1 came in place, and one of the things about SALT 1 was you can only have so many anti-ballistic missile systems. For some reason, the Nike program was considered an anti-ballistic missile system. Now, they did have another missile coming online called the Zeus. It was tested, and that had an anti-ballistic missile capability, so maybe that's why it fell in. So by 74, all the continental sites were closed down. I think Alaska stayed alive until like 79. But here, including our site, they were all deactivated. So here's basically BA 79, December we go active. 59 we start converting. Army National Guard takes over 63. 74 we're deactivated. It's still a National Guard base, and they still use it. I heard they used it as an armory for a while. And then 9201, the state took it over. They used it as a state correctional facility. We still have people that would come there and they said, oh, I remember that building. That's where we did riot control training. You know, and this is where we go in and do the tear gas training. And they also converted, on our site, there used to be 2 barracks. Open bay barracks. If anybody, a long time ago, remember the open bay, the open showers, all that stuff? They reconverted them all into offices and training spaces and stuff, which works really good for CAP, because we can use that as a training place. We do a lot of our operations there. We took it over in 2004. I get back from an overseas tour, and in 2018, I went down below and I went, what's this? And my safety officer is like, don't go down there, it's really dangerous. Which, you know, when you do when somebody says that, you go down there, you go see what's down there. And hey, by the time we got done, the safety officer was breaking off the welds off of it. So, but we started working on it in 2018. By 2024, we finally got it opened up to the public. So what did, okay, I remember I said it was a double site. So it's one of the, there's a number of them around the country, but not a lot. This is one of the few that's still in pretty good shape. I've heard stories this is like almost the best one on the East Coast as far as restoration. Now there is one down in the Everglades. I was telling somebody here, you can visit that. I think it's open on Sundays at 2 for a tour. And then SF 88 out in San Francisco is a national park site that you can tour, but it just got vandalized really bad. They cut through the fence, went in and did some massive damage. So I don't know if it's, do you know if it's open, Dave?
It is.
It is.
It's just the workshop that they had.
Oh, they did the workshop. Oh, that's right, they did the workshop. That one was weird because again, it had 2 magazines. One you could go down in, and the elevator still works. They have a launcher that works. And then the other one's their workshop. And these guys, the volunteers there, they were actually at the sites or with one of the sites, and they're trying to keep it operational. And they're jury rigging stuff left and right because, 50 years old. So anyhow, we talked about the magazine styles, and we talked about the elevators. That's what it looked like in 2014. I'm going back up on stage. This is my little reference point. See the tree growing right there? So here's the magazines. That's the elevators. So this would be, these two here were Ajax only. These two were modified Ajax. And then these two are Hercules. So you can't tell, but these are longer. If you actually walk, if you go down there today, stand here and look down this way. This one, you can, obviously it's shorter. That's the Warhead Assembly Building. They didn't tell you that. You would build the missile here, it would come in canisters and pieces. They would assemble the missile in the launcher there. They'd bring it out on this road, and if it was Ajax, they would fuel it here. Well, when the Hercules came in, how do you put a 1,000-pound warhead on your missile? You're not going to pick it up by hand. They actually built a building with a crane in it. And so we still have that building. That's our display area. And that's right there. And then they would bring it out and then put it down into the magazine, and it's good. And it would stay there. It's still weird that even the liquid-fueled ones, they would fuel it, put it down in the magazine, and then I don't know how often they had to refuel it and stuff like that. I haven't figured that one out yet. So, I know, I'm young. This is like 10 years later or 4 years later. You see the big white, you still see that big tree, but now you're seeing a bunch of other trees growing up now too. Because the state's not doing anything down there. So that's when we got down there and went, ooh, what's this? And so we started fixing it up. That's there's one of the elevators. You can see how bad it was by the time when we started playing with it. So stage one is we pumped out all the magazines, and they're like Olympic-sized swimming pools. And they're full of groundwater. Let me reverse that. They're full of rainwater, no groundwater. They don't leak from the ground. They leak from the overhead because all the seals on the elevators are rotted. So every time it rains, it goes in there. So we get an inch of rain up above, we get an inch of rain down below. And so when we were there, they were like 11 feet deep in water. But it was clear. It was really clear. I had a frog. I think he just moved. Every time we pumped one out, he moved to the next one. So, and I did find one dead body when I was pumping it out.
No.
Yeah. It was a squirrel. Poor guy. Felt bad for him. So anyhow, so we had to pump out all the magazines just to see what was under them inside. Most of them were almost totally cleared out. There are some of them have still some of the hydraulic equipment for the elevator. So you still see them in that, totally rusted. People are like, you gonna get the elevator working? No. So we had to get rid of all the vegetation. It's hard to see, but in the middle one, just piles of brush. And so we went out to Baltimore County and said, hey, can we do brush pile burns? And they said yes. And then Williams, the gas station, the gas line right next to us, said, hold on a second. And I said, if you have gas leaks, that's a bigger problem. And then we had to get rid of all the topsoil. You had 50 years worth of topsoil just piling up. So that took us a long time. But we had people come out and that's all they wanted to do. It's like, give me a shovel, give me a wheelbarrow, I'm happy. Phase 2, we started painting. So on the right, you see that's one of the steps going down into the magazine. On the left, that's one of our elevators, recently painted. And then what we're trying to do now is, there's a lot of asphalt, but again, the asphalt's 40 plus years old. So we're trying to stabilize it. We're never going to fix it, but we're trying to stabilize it. So we're dumping a lot of blacktop sealer down. So. And then phase 3, we're trying to acquire stuff. We do have a acquisition radar or target tracking radar. And talked to somebody, he says it could be target tracking or missile tracking. It's all the software that's different. And so we're trying to get that put up on its legs. Should have that done by hopefully open house. And we couldn't acquire a missile quite yet, so we started building one. So we have a half-scale mock-up, almost done. It should be ready by June or April. Okay. He's the main guy building it. Him and the other guy are just having a field day, loving life. But now they have a new task. It's like, oh, it looks really good horizontal, but what if we could make it vertical? So, can't stop when you're ahead, can you? So, if you look at it, that's on the right, that's actually the booster, half scale. And then, on the right next to it, let me get it right. Launchers on the right and the 4 boosters on the left. But that's half scale, and it's still 20 feet long. It's pretty neat. But, and I don't have a picture of it, out on eBay, somebody was selling a booster, a Hercules booster. And so, of course, my great co-workers managed to get it donated to us. So we just had to go down and get it. Now it's in really bad shape, and that's the next project they're going to work on, is fix the booster. But that's down there now. You can see that when you go down and visit it. And boy, it looks much better there than it does there. You can barely see, but this is from 2020. This is the first elevator we painted. And this is from Google Maps. So if you go onto Google Maps and do 3085 Hernwood Road, you will now see all 6 of these are painted. So we have all the above ground metal painted, concrete painted, and you're starting to see, black asphalt around these. So the goal, right now you can go down into this one, Ajax, elevator is up. You can go down into this one, Hercules, elevator is down, doors are closed. And then we're trying to get that all, the asphalt sealed. I'm still wanting to have you be able to go into this one, which we haven't done anything. So you can go down the steps and then walk in and see what it looked like before we started. Because you go in there and you look and go, you guys didn't do that much. I want you to go down to another one and go, this is what we did. That's why I'm coughing, it's all the rust there. So,
Where is Herman Road with that?
Herman Road is right out here. So what you're looking at here is, okay, back to the Warhead Assembly, Missile Assembly, comes up. Here's the 2 admin buildings. This is the parking lot. State police are still here. They will train their dogs every so often there. But yeah, so Herman Road right here. And if you do come today, you just come in and we'll just meet in this parking lot and walk down. If you come, our next open house will be the 27th of April, and then the 4th Sunday of each month, except for July, which is the 3rd Sunday, because there was a conflict, we have open houses. So from 1 to 4, you can come and join the tour. If you have a whole bunch of people, like you have another organization, a VFW or whatever, you have 20 plus people who want to do a tour, we can set up a private tour of the tunnel. So, okay, and
I think